WCVB Channel 5. The inside word from Beacon Hill to Capitol Hill. Today's newsmakers are going on the record.
Good morning, everyone. It is Sunday, June 7th. I'm Ed Harding.
And I'm Charmin Sacchetti, and joining us at the table, Massachusetts State Auditor Diana DiZoglio. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me.
All right, your push to audit the legislature, as you know, has dragged on for about a year and a half after 72% of voters here in Massachusetts passed it at the ballot box in 2024. Then last week, the House passed what they're calling a transparency bill. It would apply existing public records laws to the governor's office, but not lawmakers. It allows the legislature's administrative functions to be audited, not constitutional functions. The bill also attempts to narrow what your office can review. You've called this bill a dumpster fire. Tell me why.
Yeah, that is correct. It is a dumpster fire, Charmin, and here's why. What the House of Representatives did this week is they not only undermined democracy by voting to strip away everything that the electorate decided in the November 2024 election cycle on that ballot question for my office to conduct an audit of the state legislature to the tune of 72%. But they also, essentially went a step further, and they made it so that essentially they're also taking the court's power away from them.
Right, they're saying the courts can't review any dispute.
Right, so this is something that, is just completely bogus on every front. They're saying that this just limits the audit. No, what this does is this gives the speaker full control over the audit, like he's wanted this entire time, and it makes it so that our office can get records, so long as the speaker says we can get records, and that is not an audit from our office.
This separation of powers issue, and that keeping the courts from reviewing any dispute, that's how that would be resolved on their end. What's your response to that?
Yeah, well, the power of the courts is to adjudicate laws. It is to settle disputes. This is a very big legal dispute between the people of Massachusetts and the legislature right now, and it deserves to be heard in the courts, where that is their powers to settle these differences. And we've asked the courts for their remedy to be, giving a ruling on the constitutionality. We very much want that ruling from the courts, because we're confident that it's constitutional. Charmin, they're not confident in their argument. That's why they're trying to keep us out of the courts, change the law, and in the law, write into law that the auditor's office is blocked from accessing the justice system. That is unconstitutional. They cannot legislate in the Mass General laws that the courts don't have the power to adjudicate matters of law. They are violating the separation of powers. That's the court's role, not their role. And Mr. Speaker has led his membership down a very, very dangerous path. I just want to add, too, you said that, they voted to subject the governor's office to the public records law. Okay, that's great, but once again, they're making laws for thee, but not for me when it comes to these things. The governor has endorsed the public records ballot initiative, right? That's going to increase access to public records. We will take that support. For the speaker to lead his members down the path of saying, okay, great, well then you can follow the public records law, but they're not going to. Well, guess what, Mr. Speaker? We're going to the ballot, and we're going to actually pass a law again that is going to tell them exactly where the voters stand. And I'm confident that that ballot question is going to pass with much more than 72% of the vote this time.
You mentioned the Speaker. The Speaker took to the floor, and Ron Mariano said that the bill will boost access to public records and set a clear framework for legislative audits. He also had this to say. Listen.
As a result of this legislation, the auditor will be able to conduct the audit that the voters have called for.
The auditor will be able to conduct the audit that the voters have called for. Your response to that is?
That is completely false. Completely false. I will not be able to conduct any legitimate audit under this so-called transparency bill. We cannot, under government auditing standards, which we are required to follow by the Government Accountability Office at the federal level, we cannot call something an audit when the entity that we are auditing is controlling and calling the shots about what they're going to give us and not give us, and about how the audit's going to actually be conducted. We don't follow the speaker's auditing rules. We have to follow the government auditing standards from the Government Accountability Office. So the Speaker's also trying to usurp the authority of how audits are conducted from the Government Accountability Office with this bill. And again, I'm very sad for the membership. It was a bad day for democracy in the House of Representatives. And I understand that there are disagreements, but that's why the courts are there. The courts are there to let the courts decide. And I have said time and time again, if the courts rule in a certain way, if the courts put limitations in any way, I have said our office will need to follow that. And, you know, we saw with stipend reform, there was a stipend reform ballot question that was going to reform the stipend system in the legislature. We had advocates trying to take that to the ballot box. The SJC said, sorry, that's not constitutional, right? And the advocates had to, unfortunately, you know, not be able to take that to the ballot. So we very much understand that if there are things that we advocate for, that we support, but the courts rule them unconstitutional, or the courts say that certain limitations are needed, that we do have to follow that. That's the way the system works, even if you are advocating for something else. But it's unfortunate that the House of Representatives doesn't respect and recognize the court's authority to adjudicate matters of law and set those parameters for state government.
On the landscape that we're on right now, is it good enough to stave off the proposed ballot question on the public records this fall? Yes or no?
Absolutely not. You know, the Speaker and the leadership team in the House of Representatives got together with groups like the ACLU, who, to my understanding, is supposed to be supporting constitutional rights like accessing the justice system. But this bill said we don't have a right to access the justice system. Got together with the ACLU, Common Cause, the Massachusetts newspapers, the Publishers Association, and got together without us having any knowledge of it, with no committee hearing, and all came out on the same day and said that they had been working together privately on their version of what constitutes an appropriate audit, a transparency bill, and a public records reform bill. We just wish that they just would have thought it would be nice to consult the rest of us in the state of Massachusetts, the voters of the Commonwealth, and it would have also been nice to have heard from anybody who was working on this legislation about what an audit actually looks like, what our standards are, and how to follow those standards, so that we could have given some feedback, at least at a bare minimum. But they're not interested in that, right? They're not interested in that. They're interested in moving things forward. And, you know, the ACLU joined forces with the House Speaker. It's my understanding they just got a nice data privacy bill that they were working on recently through. So I'm happy for them that they got the bill that they wanted to pass. And, you know, had conversations, just happenstance, of course, with the House leadership team this last week to help them to oppose our access to justice and to help to crush the 72% voter mandated audit that you voted for.
Let's talk about the Senate. They did vote to give you some financial information, but the resolution that they went ahead and voted on and passed made a point to say they do not cede to an audit. After the Senate's vote, lawmakers said you'd get the information you needed in a matter of days. Have you received it?
They did send over their version of what they believe is the information that we have requested. And our office is looking at that, but we are still suing because they have, regardless of whether or not the information was complete or incomplete with respect to the auditor's office's opinion, they still did say in their resolution that they refuse to acknowledge the law that voters voted for, that they are not at all conceding to an audit, and that they are just sending these few records over to us out of the kindness of their hearts. No, they're sending these records over to our office because the SJC just issued a ruling demanding that the Attorney General, Fisher cut bait. She had to, because of the SJC order, acknowledge that she is completely unwilling to enforce this law, which we've been trying to get her to admit for the last year and a half. Well, she's been claiming she supports us, but hasn't supported us at all. And Charmin, I'm just going to say this. You know, after that order, they had a decision themselves to make about what they were going to do. Do they want to lose in court again, or do they want to just hand over the documents and participate? So they're trying to do the bare minimum. And the bare minimum isn't sufficient, so we are still suing.
What's next? So you're still suing. What's next? Any more litigation, or are you just going to continue with the same? What's next?
We have filed in Superior. Well, we filed with the SJC. They referred it to Superior Court, and there are going to be legal proceedings that will ensue, and we're going to go through the process just like we did with the SJC hearing, and we're going to fight for the 72%. We're going to fight for the audit. We're going to fight to get access to the initial records that we have requested. A lot of people have been getting confused about what this audit looks like because the legislature has purposefully tried to confuse folks about what the audit is. We have not limited the audit to a set of 4 basic public records requests. Certainly not. That's not an audit. We have said that we will keep the scope of the audit with the subject matters of issues such as state contracting and finances. Those are very broad issues that will include and necessitate our requesting many more records to be able to look at contracting issues.
You're going to have to keep going back to court to get more records.
That is our concern, and I think that what the Speaker and his membership are trying to do is trying to nip this in the bud, try to block us from being able to sue them over and over again, because they are well aware that I am not going to cross any potential constitutional boundaries with this audit. They are aware that we respect the Constitution in the auditor's office, so they are trying to, make it so we can't even get access to the court because they know they're going to lose, Shyman and Ed. That's the reality of what's happening
The
here.
auditor's in the chair. We're on the record. Stay with us.